Hello there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. Now, Brie Larson has become this huge, I suppose, global phenomenon following, of course, the last couple of years, with things like Captain Marvel, Kong Skull Island, Room. She's demonstrated a breadth of ability as a performer that, because I suppose the funny thing is about certain actors, and I think Marvel might be responsible for sort of bringing them out of obscure corners, is that you get these sort of quirky personalities who you would associate with a certain type of story. So, for instance, your Chris Pratts, your Brie Larsons, who you think, oh, or even the other side of things, away from comedy, with your more serious actors like Robert Downey Jr., who, yes, has done comedy, but you can see being a very self-serious actor at that particular time period, or even Chadwick Boseman, who you could imagine being like, oh, well, this is too serious, too prestigious an actor for a Marvel film. And I think it's one of the credits to the MCU is the fact that it really plucks these actors who could have been stuck in a certain lane, in a certain style, and allowed them to demonstrate their range and ability. And of course, with prestige and fame comes the ability to do more projects that they may not have had the opportunity to do. And of course, with Brie Larson, this extends not only to performing, but also directing, allowing her to make today's film, which is Unicorn Store. And I suppose this is loosely starting to fall into a theme that I've sort of has been continuous over the course of the year, but a few weeks ago, of course, with Sorry to Bother You, creates this sort of loose idea of stories about the ways in which at this particular time period, in this particular generation, how we're processing, I suppose, the transition into adulthood, the sort of quarter-life crises, the way that this is increasingly, we are becoming generationally, well, we are suffering generationally more from arrested development to some degree, because, the media and culture as a whole caters more towards that sense of arrested development. Marvel itself is a product of the fact that now we into our 20s, into our 30s, are granted permission socially to enjoy things like superheroes or like fantasy without, feeling that sense of infantilization. And so you have these stories about people who, you have that sense of people struggling with a sense of identity in an age where individualization is becoming more prevalent. The idea that we are being promised a sense of importance to our creativity, to the fact that we're seeing a greater number of artists and creatives who at an earlier age are being told that their creative ability has import, and that going into the world they won't be suppressed or forced into a more conventional lifestyle. And then, of course, once you reach adulthood, that sense of, oh, but there isn't really a place for a creative personality, and it's not quite as, despite the fact that a film like this presents the ideas of social acceptance, of open communication, particularly with the character parents. You still have these sort of weird, quirky characters who don't really know how to fit into the world, and so they because we live in a society, or at least societies, if you know, so British, European, American societies that nurture and how do I say indulge, but that encourage that sense of creative value, and yet that, you know, unless you can find a use for it, unless you can find a place for it, you feel this sense of failure, because if you're a creative creature, or, you know, a creative being, and there is no obstacle to your creativity, and yet you still can't, you know, there is still no function to it, then the only feeling left is failure. And I think that the film really challenges that very well, and deals with the idea of someone who doesn't really know what to do with themselves, because when all they have is failure, and so therefore all they can do is fall back onto the conventional, traditional sort of choices that they're not being forced into, but they don't really know what other options they have, you know, like a more traditional sort of workplace, office job, or, you know, a more traditional sort of romantic pursuit. And you get a character like Kit who just feels the crushing sense of isolation and failure, and so therefore the fact that the unicorn store becomes this outlet by which she starts to express and explore her identity. And of course all of this is metaphorical, and it's, like I say, the sorry to bother you type storytelling is all symbolic and metaphorical. And the idea for a unicorn story is that it's about self-exploration, and the idea of the sort of strange, creative yet isolated girl trying to come to terms with her identity through her quest to earn a unicorn is, it's, of course, there's something quite romantic about it, and I don't mean in a partner sense, but almost in a sense of self. And it sort of does fall into that quirky comedy. Is a bit strong, I suppose. I do think it's sort of, for people who like things like Arrested Development, The Office, that kind of, or even going into things like Community, that sense of comedy where it's not necessarily about hitting jokes and hitting certain lines and hitting certain moments, but more about the sort of strangeness of the world around us. I definitely think it comes from that school of comedy where you almost laugh because you want to fill the space where there is an awkward moment. And that's hugely popular right now, so it makes sense that a film like this really works in a cinematic sense towards that style. And like I say, MCU sort of connections, you know, you get that sense. Of course, Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson, you get, and of course their chemistry, which comes back from Captain Marvel, demonstrates the ability to put these actors in a new context together, and yet still have it work in a strange way. And this is, like I said, this is a huge quirk fest. So this film is definitely going to cater towards some people and absolutely turn others off, because quirkiness is a bit of a Marmite style in cinema, and some people can only cope with so much quirk. And this is definitely one of those films that has that in spades. But I do think, like I say, with these deeper themes and the sort of loose comedy style of it, means that you can watch this, but you don't, you know, it's in a nice sort of its own little cubby, I suppose, of storytelling and character piece. And again, the fact that it gave Brie Larson an opportunity to star and direct, I would be interested to see her continue to direct, even beyond, you know, in films where she isn't in the cast, she is solely a director, because I would want to see her, if from her comedy background she leans more into, writing or directing comedy, I would absolutely like to see that, because, as I've said at the beginning, Brie Larson, despite things like The Room, like Captain Marvel, comes from comedy, or came from comedy. And there is that fear, like with Chris Pratt and like with several other actors who have gone into like Star Wars and Marvel and all sorts of that side of cinema, that it means that when it comes to comedy, which is a smaller, less blockbustery part of the industry, they don't get the opportunity to be able to do these smaller, indie, quirky films that allow them to sort of form a different kind of creative voice. Saying that, like I said, if it wasn't for the MCU, perhaps this wouldn't exist, because this sort of gave her the ability, the weight to be able to make a film like this. I'm unsure, but it's definitely more of what I would want to see, because blockbusters, by definition, should almost be the platforms that allow people to, of course, escalate into positions of creative power to then wield, to be able to then create smaller, more independently minded filmmaking. But we'll see. We'll see if that, we'll see if other MCU or Star Wars or Disney, Warner Brothers alumni do continue to create projects like this, because I would absolutely be interested in this almost subculture that would come from that kind of big franchise. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment below, and share the video, because there's all helping the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded. Check out my back catalogue of over 250 videos, and follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I tweet about TV shows and films, and I share these videos once they're uploaded to YouTube, either the day of or the day after. Thank you for joining me. Take care.